Hi everyone, so I am trying this again. So you guys should have already seen the first video, which was the first half of the questions. And while I was answering this particular question on geographic locations, the camera stopped. I'm actually recording this directly through my YouTube because that's the easiest way to upload it. I was experiencing issues. I think it's because I am using a MacBook Air and the space on the MacBook Air is very limited. So anytime I try to upload things on there, because I already have Microsoft Office, I think a lot of the space is taken up on the MacBook Air. So I think that that's pretty much the issue that I'm encountering. So I'm filming this on directly through my YouTube channel. So I'm going to continue with the question, which was, in your job choices, have you specifically focused on geographical preference? So I explained that it's contingent on what is of more importance to you. Are you more focused on whether there will be less competition, or are you confident in your ability to compete with other job applicants and you feel like you're a very strong job candidate? Not that applying for jobs is easier in smaller cities, but there is less competition. So having a job as a training and development specialist or consultant in New York City, you have two, three, 400 or 4,000 people vying for that particular job, especially at a larger company. Whereas a training and development consultant in Richmond, Virginia, there is a considerably lower amount of people applying. So maybe the odds will be more in your favor. It just really depends. And the last question in this section was, how do you balance working for multiple employers at once? Do you have the flexibility to work from home? Yeah, so pretty much for each of the jobs that I work, I am able to perform a lot of the job duties from home. I teach a hybrid and hybrid courses. So hybrid is basically half online, half in person. So uh, the majority of my job, I would say, in each of the job fields I have are online in some way or capacity. So it would be more difficult to manage working at multiple employers if they were all fully online. I'm sorry, if they were, I got distracted. It would be harder to manage multiple employers if they were not fully online. Hopefully this will not, I'll be able to record this entire video because I just realized I should have turned my phone on airplane mode so that if I get any calls, it doesn't interrupt this video, but we shall see. I don't think I can change the airplane mode now that I've started recording the video, but that's okay. So the next set of questions is questions about IO in general. So the first is, what was the most challenging part of becoming an IO psychologist? I think it's just figuring out which area of IO is you want to get into, because there's so many different areas that you could get into. It's very broad. So I think that that's probably the most challenging part, is figuring out like what area of IO do I really want to focus on. The next question is, what is the most rewarding thing about your career so far? Same answer as the question above. The most rewarding thing about being an IO psychologist is there's the amount of things you could do is so vast. I could get into training and development. I could get into org development. I could go into diversity and inclusion. I could become a professor. There's so many areas of IO psychology, so I think that's probably the most rewarding part of it. The next question is, as you work to apply research-based best practices to organizational settings, have you found it difficult to make connections between specific case studies and actual organizational work? This sounds like it's describing the scientist practitioner problem, where all of this research is available to practitioners. However, a lot of the practitioners and people who work in as IO psychologists are not taking advantage of and not utilizing all of the research on organizations that is out here. I haven't necessarily encountered issues where it was difficult to make the connection. I think that there is just reluctance sometimes to rely on research and rely on science because practitioners feel like the academics that create the research maybe don't have experience, so it might not be taken as seriously. I hope that answered. I hope that answered that question. What other jobs and career directions could you see yourself taking with your degree? So I love, and I really focus on diversity and inclusion, and I enjoy teaching, but I could also see myself working in facilitation and training and development, as well as continuing to do things in the area of organizational development. I also enjoy executive coaching. So I think a lot of it ties in together. Diversity and inclusion, though, is probably the direction that I'm most passionate about. But I think diversity and inclusion is in everything. It's in training and development. It's in executive coaching. It's in leadership. Um, so I would say that that's the direction I would take. Areas outside of IO, I think IO is in every organization, so I don't see myself working in anything outside of IO. I am really interested in social media and how companies manage their social media. So, but that still has an IO component. So I think if I was not doing anything in IO, I would probably be doing something in the social media realm, or graphic design, because I do enjoy creating flyers and creating promotional items for organizations, and I do that as well, sort of like freelance. But yeah, I think I would. So, what would you be doing if you weren't in IO? Pretty much, probably social media, something in the creative arts, because I'm very like artsy and creative. So, probably, like I said, social media or graphic design. The next question asks, what has changed or what differs in the IO field between your learned experiences in the classroom, your experiences in the workforce, and your experiences as a professor? Well, I would say that I wouldn't say anything has changed. And maybe I'm not well equipped to answer this question because I'm a new IO psychologist. I did just become an IO psychologist as I recently finished my degree, my PhD, a few months ago. However, I feel like many graduate programs don't fully prepare and equip IO psychologists for things like consulting, for getting into diversity and inclusion. In my IO psych program, I didn't really learn a lot about succession planning, and I feel like this is a skill that a lot of organizations are utilizing. And so there were certain areas of IO that I feel like were not covered in as much detail. That's why it's really important to research the program that you want to attend and making sure that areas of interest that you are interested in are covered in their curriculum. So the next question asks, after pursuing IO psychology at the graduate level, what challenges have you faced in your own job search process? Have companies ever reached out to you, or have you ever reached out to them? What I'm finding is that because I'm so interested in diversity and inclusion, I will write an article about D&I on my LinkedIn profile, and um, employees and companies will reach out to me and say, hey, I would love to chat with you about, this aspect of diversity and inclusion. So I would say if you're passionate about a particular area in IO psychology, to write a lot of articles and write a lot of content around that area because it is something that you're passionate about. And like I said, you guys should definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. Make sure you're also connecting with Dr. Noel, and you are connecting with people, because if you are really seeking a job in the field, it's usually not what you know, but who you know. So you want to just make sure that you are creating connections, with legitimate connections, with as many people as you can. What challenges have you faced in your own job search process? Well, I think because IO is so vast and broad, sometimes organizations are looking for you to have refined experience in a particular area, like 5 to 10 years of training and development experience. And because, as you guys saw on my resume, I have a hodgepodge of different types of experience, I think that has presented challenges if I'm looking to secure a job in a particular domain in IO psychology. But I think that that is also beneficial because I have a lot of skills that translate into a lot of different types of jobs. It seems like all the jobs you have pursued have been very different. How do you manage that? Is this one of your goals? So that's this question kind of goes into the last question. Yeah, it wasn't on purpose. I just have so many different interests, and I was offered different opportunities, and I took advantage of that. But like I said, it's really important if you're trying to get into a particular area of IO psychology. Sorry, guys, I'm holding the camera in my hand. So I apologize for the fingers and the wobbliness. But if you are looking to get into a particular area, if you're looking to get into consulting, you just want to make sure you're getting your feet wet and you're getting as much experience in that area as possible. It can not necessarily hurt you. It can only really help you to have experience in all different areas and domains, but you really want to make sure that you figure out what area of IO psychology you want to focus on and getting as much experience in that domain as you possibly can. What motivates you to work? Are certain tasks or specialties more or less appealing to you? What are your goals? I'm highly extroverted, as you guys have heard me say throughout this Q&A. Really enjoy interacting with other people. A lot of my roles that I'm currently doing are online, as you guys know, and I really miss interacting with other people and the human interaction. So I think that being able to, having the ability to connect with people, meeting new students every semester, meeting new people on the job, and every single day is really what motivates me. Any tasks that will allow me to utilize the knowledge and skills that I've developed through my experiences and learned through my coursework is really what is more appealing to me. So my goals are just to be able to continue to progress in the IO field, to really use my knowledge and my passion for diversity and inclusion in whichever roles I decide to pursue in the future. The last question in this area is, of the jobs listed on your resume, which ones do you feel most closely or significantly applied to your IO degree and training? I would definitely say the organizational development jobs. All of it has really applied. I've been able to use all of it. I would say the one that applies least is recruiting. You don't really learn anything about recruiting in IO psychology. You learn the implications of recruiting and hiring and things like discrimination in recruiting and hiring, but you don't really learn how to recruit. So I would say probably being an organizational development consultant. Also, what I learned a little bit about diversity and inclusion. I took a course in it, but I learned more through reading and just my own exploration in the field. But I would also say teaching. Teaching, I've really been able to use what I've learned in my PhD program, especially if it's a course that is more specialized. Like I've taught intro to psychology and I've taught social psychology, but I've also taught things like employee engagement and motivation, diversity and inclusion, things along those lines. And I've really been able to pull from my previous coursework, which has been really enjoyable. But I would say the job that I feel is most related to my IO degree would probably be my organizational development consulting and diversity and inclusion consulting. So pretty much the consultant roles that I've had in the past and present. So the last two questions are on diversity. The first question asks, what are some specific ways to encourage and include greater diversity in organizations? Well, I gave you guys about 5 or 6 reasons in the lecture, but I would say 2 ways to encourage and include diversity in organizations that stick out to me are to make sure that you are including some sort of mentorship program within the organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person from a specific background mentoring another person of that same background, but especially for women in organizations, mentorship is extremely beneficial and can increase retention rates. So I would make sure that I'm utilizing, as a organizational leader, I'm utilizing mentorship programs. And also, I think it's really important to look at promotional items, making sure that there's diversity in your advertisements and in your promotions, because a lot of companies sort of neglect this, particularly cosmetic companies, for example. And I follow a lot of influencers on my social media pages, and a lot of them are influencers of color, female influencers of color, and a lot of the discussion that I see taking place is that there is a lack of inclusion in the promotional items and advertisements in a lot of these brands. And color, money has no color, so it's in an organization's best interest to really focus their efforts on showcasing your dedication and your commitment to diversity. So those are the 2 tips I would give organizational leaders and organizations, if you want to foster an inclusive environment. The very last question is, have you experienced any adverse impacts, racial or cultural barriers in your various jobs or experiences? I think this is a very excellent question. My simple answer is I don't know. It's very possible that I've been discriminated against because of my background, because of what I look like, but I don't know, and I don't like to adopt that mindset. For me, if I apply for a job or I don't get an opportunity, I feel like it's because that I am lacking in some way in experience or an ability, or because of the perception that I'm lacking. So what I really try to do is use every closed door to better myself. And if I really wanted a job and I didn't get it, I don't see that as racial or cultural barrier. I see that as I need to better myself, because you really can't ignore excellence. And if you're an excellent person, an excellent candidate, you're knowledgeable, you have the skills and abilities, you're going to have doors open for you. So I don't operate on the mindset of I'm not getting an opportunity because of what I look like, and because I'm being discriminated against. But that's not to say that it hasn't happened. I just have not been aware of it happening where it's like blatant, like where we're not going to hire you because you're a woman. We're not going to hire you because you're black. We're not going to hire you because you're young. I've never experienced that to my knowledge. And I would hope, I'm the eternal optimist. And I would hope that the reason I haven't gotten opportunities in the past was because I didn't have the ability, or because the employer thought that I was not a good fit for that particular role. And there's other roles out there and so many other opportunities. So I'm glad that was the last question, because I feel like that allows me to end this Q&A on a very high and positive note. So it's been a huge pleasure to answer your questions. And like I said, I am very willing and happy and excited to connect with you guys on LinkedIn. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me. I will leave all of my information is in the description box if you guys are interested in connecting. It has been a pleasure, and I will see you guys hopefully sometime in the future, maybe on LinkedIn, maybe next time.